The city was alive with lights, neon reflections dancing on the glass of high-rise buildings, and Ava leaned against the railing of her balcony, glass of wine in hand. The soft hum of the party inside her apartment barely reached her ears out here, where the night air was cooler and quieter. She often came out to breathe, to escape the chatter and laughter inside, but tonight, something felt different. Her eyes wandered to the neighboring balcony across the narrow gap between buildings. That's when she noticed him, tall, dark, and effortlessly commanding, yet relaxed in the way he stood, looking out at the city as if he owned every light and shadow. His hair caught the glow of the streetlights, and there was a subtle intensity in his gaze that made her chest tighten. Ava sipped her wine, pretending she wasn't staring, but curiosity had a stubborn grip. She had never seen him before, or at least, not this close. His presence was magnetic, drawing her eyes like moths to a flame. She wasn't usually one to be distracted, but tonight the air felt charged, as though the city itself had conspired to bring this stranger into her orbit. Then, almost as if sensing her attention, he turned. Their eyes met, and for a fraction of a second, time seemed to hesitate. A small, confident smile curved his lips, a smile that invited intrigue, and maybe, just maybe, danger. Ava's pulse quickened. She looked away for a moment, pretending to admire the skyline, but she couldn't resist another glance. He was still there, watching, and the smile lingered. Finally, emboldened by a mix of curiosity and something deeper, something she couldn't yet name, Ava stepped closer to the edge of her balcony. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" she called softly, her voice carrying across the space between them. He raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his expression. "It is. But it's even better when you have company," he replied, his voice smooth, rich, and slightly teasing. A spark of something electric shot through her. There was no hesitation in his tone, no formality, just a casual confidence that made her heart beat faster. She realized with a start that she wanted this conversation to last, wanted to know him, to explore the subtle tension threading the night. "Company, huh?" she said, leaning lightly on the railing, letting her eyes meet his again. "I don't usually have visitors on my balcony." He tilted his head, as though considering her words, then smiled wider. "Maybe tonight should be an exception. I promise I don't bite unless invited, of course." Ava laughed softly, the sound warm in the night air. There was a charm about him, a mix of mystery and playfulness that made her suddenly aware of the warmth rising in her chest. "You're confident," she said, her tone teasing, but there was a hint of something more. Vulnerability, curiosity. "I prefer to call it observant," he replied, leaning slightly against his own railing. His gaze never left hers, and in that look was a weight, a promise of something unspoken yet intensely felt. The city continued to glow around them, but for Ava, the world had narrowed to the space between their balconies, to the charged silence punctuated by their laughter and glances. She felt drawn to him, the way one is drawn to the edge of something unknown, thrilling, and potentially transformative. "I don't even know your name," she said, almost reluctantly. "Liam," he said simply. His voice carried a quiet strength, yet a warmth that made her lips part involuntarily. "And you are?" "Ava," she replied, the single word tasting strangely intimate in the night air. For a moment, they stood there, names exchanged, yet it felt as though 1,000 stories were waiting to unfold between them. The night seemed endless, full of promise and possibility. A gentle breeze stirred, lifting her hair and brushing against her skin, and she felt a shiver not from the cool air, but from anticipation. "Nice to meet you," Ava, Liam said, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. The pleasure's mine, she replied, unable to hide the smile tugging at her lips. And in that quiet, electric moment on the balcony, the night stretched ahead of them, full of unspoken desire, laughter, and the first tentative stirrings of a connection neither of them expected but both knew they couldn't ignore. The night seemed to wrap around them like a velvet curtain, soft and intimate. Ava lingered on the balcony, unable to retreat back inside to the party, her mind tangled in thoughts of Liam. She had expected a brief, fleeting encounter, maybe a few words exchanged with a stranger under the city lights, but what unfolded felt like something more. Something urgent. Liam tilted his head, studying her as if he could see past the surface, past the glass of wine and the polite laughter she'd left behind. "Do you come out here often?" he asked casually, though there was an undercurrent of curiosity in his voice. "Not really," Ava admitted, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "I usually stay in the middle of the chaos. But sometimes, it's nice to step away and look at the city from above. It makes things feel different." "Different how?" His eyes glimmered in the soft city light, intense but inviting, as though he genuinely wanted her to answer. She considered lying, giving him a casual shrug, but the truth escaped her. "It feels freer. Like anything could happen out here. No expectations, no rules." He smiled knowingly, leaning a little closer to the railing, bridging the distance between them without stepping over it. "I like that," he said softly. "I think some of the best things happen when there are no rules." Ava felt a shiver run down her spine, not from the night air, but from the magnetic pull of his presence. She shifted slightly, feeling the weight of his gaze, warm and penetrating. "You make it sound dangerous," she said, teasing lightly. "Maybe a little," he replied, his lips curving into a half smile. "But sometimes, a little danger is exactly what we need." The conversation drifted easily, flowing like wine poured into crystal glasses. They spoke about the city, favorite restaurants, music, and books, but beneath the words was a tension neither could ignore. Every glance, every smile, every subtle shift of weight seemed to carry a promise, a whisper of desire. Ava felt herself drawn closer, not physically, but emotionally, as though each word Liam spoke tugged at some hidden chord inside her. She laughed at something he said, a warm, genuine sound that surprised her. He chuckled softly in response, and the sound was richer than any music she had heard at the party. "You laugh beautifully," he said suddenly, and for a moment, Ava's breath caught in her throat. "I could say the same about you," she replied, her voice lower now, almost shy, almost daring. There was a pause, pregnant with anticipation, the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat thunder in your chest. Neither moved, neither looked away, yet both were acutely aware of the distance between them. It wasn't just space, it was the invisible line between curiosity and temptation, between knowing and wanting. Liam's expression softened. "Ava, can I ask you something?" "Of course," she said, her fingers tightening around the wine glass, though not from the cold. "What do you want tonight?" His question was direct, but not in a reckless way. It carried sincerity, curiosity, and the kind of honesty that startled her. Ava hesitated, then let herself answer honestly. "I don't know. Something different, I guess. Something real. Something that makes me feel alive." He nodded slowly, as if he understood completely, as if he had been waiting for that answer. "I think I can relate to that," he murmured. "I've spent too long following rules, doing what's expected. Tonight, I want something more. Something worth remembering. For a heartbeat, the city disappeared. The distant sounds of traffic and laughter faded, leaving only the two of them suspended in the night air, drawn together by words unspoken and glances that lingered too long. Ava felt her chest tighten. She wanted to reach out, to close the distance, but the moment was fragile, delicate, and she wasn't sure if it should be rushed. Yet even as reason whispered caution, her body and mind both screamed in anticipation, craving the connection that had sparked so quickly, so unexpectedly. I think, she began, then paused, unsure how to articulate the strange pull between them. Liam's eyes, patient and intense, encouraged her silently. I think meeting you, like this, it feels important. He smiled, a slow, knowing curve of his lips. I feel the same way, he admitted, voice low, intimate. And maybe, that's dangerous. But some risks are worth taking. Ava let herself breathe in that moment, letting the night air carry away hesitation. Something had shifted between them. Something electric, magnetic, undeniable. The city stretched below them, bright and endless, but she felt like she was suspended in a smaller, brighter world, one where Liam existed, and nothing else mattered. And as the breeze tousled her hair and their laughter mingled with the hum of the city, Ava knew that the night had only just begun and that whatever this was, whatever was pulling them together, it was far from over. The city lights stretched endlessly below them, glittering like a sea of diamonds, but Ava and Liam barely noticed. Their focus had narrowed, as though the night had folded in on itself, leaving only the two of them suspended in an invisible bubble of warmth and anticipation. Ava leaned slightly against the railing, glass in hand, pretending to examine the skyline, yet every glance she stole at Liam made her heart flutter. He had a way of standing there casual, yet intense, that made it impossible not to notice him. The way his eyes seemed to track her movements, the slight curve of his lips when he caught her looking, it was intoxicating. I still can't believe we're just standing here, Ava said, her voice low, almost as if admitting it aloud would make it vanish. Why not? Liam asked, stepping a fraction closer, though still maintaining the invisible line between them. His presence was magnetic, and she felt drawn to him in a way she couldn't rationalize. Sometimes, the best moments are the simplest ones. No expectations. Just this. Just this, she repeated, tasting the words like they were a secret. They fell into silence again, but it was not empty. It was alive with the tension that hummed between them, a subtle heat that made her palms tingle and her stomach twist in a delicious mix of nerves and anticipation. Every so often, their fingers brushed against the railing simultaneously, sending a small shock through her that she couldn't hide. Liam's voice broke the silence, smooth and teasing. You know, I could get used to this. Talking to you, here, like the rest of the world doesn't exist. Ava laughed softly, her chest tightening at the sincerity behind his words. You're dangerously charming, Liam. Is that a warning or a compliment? He asked, leaning slightly closer, reducing the distance without crossing the line. A smile tugged at her lips. Maybe both. He chuckled, low and rich, and for a moment, the air between them felt electric, as if the universe itself had conspired to bring them here, to this balcony, at this exact moment. The city stretched around them, alive with life, yet all she could focus on was him, his expression, his presence, the subtle curve of his jaw in the soft light. Ava shifted slightly, feeling the warmth of the night air brushing against her skin, mingling with the heat rising inside her. I feel like I've known you longer than a few hours, she confessed quietly, almost embarrassed by the admission. Maybe some connections don't need time, Liam replied, his gaze softening. Maybe they're instantaneous. A thrill ran through her at his words. The air between them seemed to hum, full of unspoken promises, of desire just beneath the surface. It wasn't physical yet not overtly, but it was magnetic, undeniable, and tantalizingly close. Instantaneous, she repeated, savoring the sound of it, letting the tension settle comfortably between them. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced the rim of her glass, though she wished they could trace him instead. Liam leaned closer again, and for a heartbeat, their faces were just a few inches apart. Ava could feel the warmth radiating from him, the subtle scent of his cologne mingling with the night air. Ava, he said softly, almost a whisper, do you feel it too? Her breath caught. Feel what? She asked, though she already knew. This, he said, his gaze locking with hers, full of something unspoken yet fiercely intense. The tension. The pull. The desire. A shiver ran through her, undeniable and delicious. She didn't look away. I do, she admitted, her voice trembling slightly not from fear, but from anticipation. The world around them seemed to pause, leaving only the two of them, suspended in a moment that was delicate, electric, and charged with possibility. The city lights twinkled below, but they might as well have been on an island, far away from everything except this connection, this inexplicable magnetism. You're dangerous, she whispered, a smile tugging at her lips despite the way her chest fluttered with excitement. And you're irresistible, he replied, the words soft but heavy with intent. Neither moved closer, but the unspoken promise lingered, thick and tangible. Their connection was like fire, quiet for now, smoldering, waiting for the right moment to flare. And both of them knew, though neither would say it aloud, that this night was only the beginning. The breeze whispered around them, teasing, playful, as if the night itself approved of their closeness. Ava's heart pounded, every nerve alight with anticipation. Liam's eyes held hers, steady and unflinching, and in that gaze, she saw possibility, temptation, and the thrilling uncertainty of what might come next. Tonight, the city might be endless, but for Ava and Liam, it felt like their world had shrunk to this balcony, to this pull, to the desire that neither of them could yet name but both of them deeply felt. The city lights below seemed to shimmer more brightly, as if reflecting the spark between them. Ava leaned on the balcony railing, her thoughts tangled and restless. Liam stood a few steps away, yet every movement he made drew her in closer, not physically, but emotionally. You know, Liam began, his voice low and thoughtful, I've spent nights like this before, looking at the city, thinking about life, but never like this. He paused, searching her face as though trying to read a secret she hadn't yet revealed. Never with someone who made it feel alive. Ava's breath caught. Alive. That word carried weight, and she realized it described everything she was feeling: the racing pulse in her chest, the fluttering of nerves, the heat that seemed to rise from nowhere. I feel it too, she admitted softly, her eyes meeting his. Like, everything's more vivid right now. Everything matters a little more. He smiled, slow and knowing, a subtle lift of the lips that made her pulse hammer faster. I'm glad you feel that, he murmured, stepping just a fraction closer, closing a distance that had felt infinite until now. Because I think I'm feeling something I haven't felt in a long time. Ava's stomach twisted, both excited and anxious. She wanted to ask him what he meant, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. Instead, she let her gaze linger on him, letting the silence stretch a quiet acknowledgement of the tension threading between them. "Liam," she started, then hesitated, unsure if speaking her thoughts aloud would make them too real, too fast. But the pull between them was undeniable, and she couldn't ignore it. "I'm drawn to you. I can't explain it, but I feel it." His eyes softened, dark pools of intensity that seemed to reach into her very soul. "Ava. I'm drawn to you too," he admitted. "More than I expected. More than I can rationalize. And I know, it's reckless, maybe, but I don't care right now." The word reckless sent a thrill through her. It was dangerous to feel this way, to allow herself to be so vulnerable, yet the magnetic pull of Liam made caution feel irrelevant. She felt the warmth of the night, the closeness of him, the subtle electricity that danced across the space between them. "You're intoxicating," she whispered, almost to herself, but Liam heard. His smile deepened, a slow, deliberate curve that made her pulse stutter. "And you're irresistible," he replied softly, his gaze never wavering from hers. "I can't tell if it's the city, the night, or you. But I haven't felt this way in years." Ava swallowed, feeling her heartbeat echo in her ears. She wanted to step closer, to bridge the gap, but fear and anticipation held her back. The tension was delicious, almost unbearable, the kind that made every glance, every breath, feel amplified. "I know this is sudden," she said, voice trembling slightly, "but I can't stop thinking about you. About tonight. About us." "Neither can I," he confessed, the words carrying weight and honesty. "And I think, we both know there's something here. Something we can't ignore." The city seemed to fade around them, leaving only the balcony, the night air, and the unspoken promise that stretched taut between them. The moment was fragile, charged with anticipation, and both of them knew that one step, one word, one touch could change everything. Liam's hand hovered near the railing, close enough that their fingers almost brushed. Ava felt a shiver ripple through her, a mix of fear, excitement, and undeniable desire. "I don't want to rush this," he said, voice husky. "But I also don't want to pretend I don't feel it." Ava nodded, understanding. The restraint was part of the allure, part of the thrill that made their connection feel electric. "I don't either," she admitted. "But I don't want to waste what's happening between us either." He smiled, a slow, deliberate expression full of warmth and intent. "Then let's not," he said softly. "Let's see where this night takes us, without overthinking, without hesitation." Her chest tightened as she nodded. She felt the magnetic pull of his presence, the silent promise in his gaze, and the thrill of the unknown. It was intoxicating, overwhelming, and utterly irresistible. The breeze stirred around them, tooling her hair and mingling with the subtle heat rising between them. The city lights reflected in their eyes, glittering like distant stars, but Ava only saw Liam, his expression, his presence, the tension that hummed like a live wire. For the first time in a long while, she let herself surrender, just a little, to the night, to the connection, to the thrill of desire that couldn't yet be named but which both of them felt, deep and undeniable. And as the night stretched on, suspended in that delicate, electric balance, Ava realized that whatever came next, the spark between them was unstoppable, and the balcony had become the stage for something neither of them would ever forget. The night had grown quieter, the distant sounds of the city softened into a gentle hum, leaving the balcony as a private world suspended above the lights below. Ava and Liam stood near the railing, their bodies just close enough that the space between them seemed charged, almost alive. Every glance, every subtle shift of weight, carried the weight of something neither of them wanted to ignore. Ava felt her heart hammering in her chest. The city lights reflected in Liam's eyes, but she could see the flicker of desire there, the same magnetic pull that had been building since the moment they first met. She tried to steady her breathing, to focus on something anything but his presence made it impossible. "You know," Liam said softly, his voice low enough that it vibrated against her skin, "I've never met anyone who challenges me the way you do." Ava's lips curved into a small, nervous smile. "Challenges you?" she asked, leaning just slightly closer, drawn by the warmth of his voice. He nodded, his gaze locking onto hers. "You're bold. You're captivating. And yet, there's a softness too. It's confusing. In a good way." She laughed softly, the sound mingling with the gentle breeze. "Confusing," she repeated. "I think that's a compliment, in a very complicated way." "Exactly," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Complicated is thrilling." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with anticipation. Ava felt the heat of his presence in a way that went beyond mere attraction. It was magnetic, overwhelming, impossible to resist. Her fingers twitched, itching to reach out, to bridge the gap, but she held back, savoring the delicious tension. Liam's hand hovered near the railing, close enough that their fingers almost touched. His gaze softened, and he leaned slightly toward her, just enough that the space between them seemed to shrink with every heartbeat. "Ava," he murmured, voice low, deliberate, "I can't deny it any longer. This, whatever this is between us, it's impossible to ignore." Her breath caught. "I feel it too," she whispered, her voice trembling with anticipation. "I've felt it from the moment we started talking, that pull, that connection." For a long moment, they just stood there, inches apart, their gazes locked, the world around them fading until it was only the two of them and the silent electricity humming in the air. Liam's fingers brushed against hers, not fully, just lightly, teasing, enough to send a shiver down her spine. "You're driving me insane," he confessed, his lips curving into a half smile. "But, in the best way." Ava felt her chest tighten, a mixture of longing and exhilaration surging through her. "I think I like being driven a little insane," she admitted, her own smile matching his. The tension between them built to an almost unbearable point. Every glance, every subtle movement, carried the promise of more. Liam stepped slightly closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "I've been careful all night," he said softly, "but I can't not feel this." Ava's breath quickened. She could feel the pull, the magnetic attraction, and for the first time, she let herself acknowledge it fully. "Neither can I," she admitted, her eyes never leaving his. The balcony seemed to shrink around them, the world reduced to the hum of the city below, the soft breeze in her hair, and the undeniable pull between them. Liam's gaze lingered on hers, intense and steady, as if weighing the unspoken question in her eyes. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was feather-light, but it sent a spark racing through her veins. "You're irresistible," he whispered, the words almost lost in the soft hum of the night. Ava's lips parted slightly, her pulse racing. "So are you," she breathed, the admission hanging between them like a fragile promise. They stood there, suspended in that delicate, electric moment, neither wanting to move too fast, yet both aching to cross the invisible line. The anticipation, the tension, the desire, it was all consuming, and they both knew that one step, one touch, one shared breath could change everything. The city lights reflected in their eyes, distant and glittering, but all Ava could see was Liam. And for the first time, she didn't want to look anywhere else. The night stretched on, endless, intimate, and alive. And in that suspended moment on the balcony, Ava realized something undeniable: desire had found them both, fierce and irresistible, and there was no turning back. The city below them hummed softly, a muted soundtrack to the unspoken intensity on the balcony. Ava and Liam leaned against the railing, shoulders nearly touching now, though neither moved deliberately closer. The night had shifted, the initial spark of attraction had settled into something warmer, deeper, a connection that neither could define, but both felt keenly. "You know," Liam said quietly, his gaze fixed on the distant lights, "I don't usually let myself feel like this. Not this quickly." Ava glanced at him, noting the rare vulnerability in his tone. "I didn't expect to either," she admitted, her voice softer than before. "But, there's something about tonight. About being here with you, it feels right." He turned his eyes toward her, catching hers with an intensity that made her stomach flutter. "Right," he repeated, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Exactly right." For a moment, neither spoke. The air was thick with possibility, but also with something else, a cautious tenderness. They had explored the tension, the attraction, the thrill of desire, but now there was a quiet pause, a space for the heart to speak. Ava shifted slightly, resting her forearms on the railing. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "why some people connect so quickly? Like, no explanation, no history, but something just clicks." Liam considered her words, his fingers lightly brushing against hers on the railing, sending a subtle current through her. "I think, sometimes connections happen when they're supposed to. Not always logical, not always easy to explain. But, you know it when it happens." Ava smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made Liam's chest tighten. "I know," she whispered. "It's rare. And a little terrifying." "Terrifying," he echoed, leaning slightly closer, his voice a low murmur that made her pulse race. "Yes," she admitted, meeting his gaze fully. "Because, it matters. When something feels like this, you can't ignore it. And the more you feel it, the more vulnerable you become." Liam nodded slowly, understanding her completely. "Vulnerability," he said, "is frightening. But it's also necessary. Without it, you can't really connect. You can't really feel." Her heart swelled at the honesty in his words. It was rare to find someone willing to acknowledge fear alongside desire, to hold space for both. "I trust you," she said softly, almost a whisper, yet it carried the weight of everything she felt. His gaze softened, and for a heartbeat, Ava thought he might reach out, close the distance, but he paused, respecting the moment. "And I trust you," he replied. "Completely." A gentle breeze stirred around them, carrying the scent of the city and the night, and Ava felt it wrap around them like a protective cloak. She realized that the pull between them had shifted from purely magnetic, thrilling desire to something more enduring, more profound. There was depth in his gaze, in the way he spoke, in the careful way he navigated this connection. "I want to know you," she said, her voice trembling slightly, though she held his gaze firmly. "Not just tonight, not just this. I want to know the real you." Liam's lips curved into a slow, thoughtful smile. "I want that too," he said, voice steady. "I've been careful with people. but with you. I don't want to hold back. I want to share, to be honest. Even the messy parts. Even the parts that scare me. Ava felt her chest tighten, moved by the sincerity in his words. Then she said simply. Let's be honest. Let's see where this goes. Together. He reached out then, lightly brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch was tender, deliberate, full of unspoken emotion. Together, he echoed, the word heavy with meaning, soft yet unwavering. For a long moment, they simply stood there, letting the night wrap around them, letting the city fade, letting the connection deepen in silence. It was a rare kind of intimacy, not physical, not urgent, but profoundly emotional. A meeting of hearts and minds that made every other sensation, every glance, every subtle brush of skin, feel amplified and significant. I feel like I could stay here forever, Ava whispered, her head tilting slightly as she looked into his eyes. Then stay, Liam replied softly. Tonight, and maybe longer. If you want. She smiled, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the night air. I do. And in that suspended moment on the balcony, under the soft glow of the city lights, Ava and Liam discovered something more than desire. They found connection. Vulnerability. Trust. And the kind of intimacy that made the heart quicken, the soul feel lighter, and the world feel infinitely brighter. The night had deepened, the city below now a soft mosaic of glowing lights and distant murmurs. On the balcony, the world had narrowed to a single, intimate space where time seemed suspended. Ava and Liam stood closer now, the invisible tension of earlier hours transformed into a steady warmth, a quiet understanding that went beyond attraction. Ava traced her gaze over him, noticing every detail, the curve of his jaw, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the subtle warmth in his expression that made her chest ache. It was more than desire now. It was connection. It was trust. It was the sense that they were both exactly where they were meant to be. Liam reached out slowly, his hand brushing hers. The contact sent a ripple of electricity through her, familiar yet comforting this time, grounding her in the moment. Ava, he murmured, voice low and steady, I've never felt anything like this before. Neither have I, she admitted, her lips curving into a gentle smile. It's overwhelming. But, in a good way. He nodded, his gaze unwavering. It is. And I don't want to lose it. Not tonight. Not ever. A silence fell, but it was not empty. It was filled with the sound of their shared breathing, the hum of the city, the subtle movements of the night. The tension that had been building for hours now settled into something tangible, intimate, and profoundly safe. Ava felt herself leaning slightly into him, a tentative movement, almost subconscious, guided by the magnetism that had drawn them together from the start. Liam caught her by the waist gently, steadying her, his touch tender yet deliberate. The warmth radiating between them was no longer only physical, it was emotional, the culmination of hours of laughter, conversation, confessions, and trust. I've never connected with anyone like this, she whispered, resting her forehead against his shoulder, letting herself be vulnerable without fear. I didn't expect tonight to be this. Me neither, he admitted softly, his hand brushing a lock of hair from her face. But maybe the unexpected moments are the ones that matter the most. Maybe they're the ones worth holding onto. Ava lifted her eyes to meet his, seeing honesty, warmth, and something more, a promise of possibility, of shared experiences yet to come. I want to hold onto it, she said, voice steady, whatever this is, I want it to last. Not just tonight. Then we will, he replied, his lips curving into a soft, reassuring smile. Together. No rushing, no forcing. Just, us, and whatever comes next. For a long moment, they simply stood there, hands entwined, the city lights reflecting in their eyes, hearts beating in quiet synchrony. There was no need for words. Every glance, every subtle brush of skin, every shared breath conveyed everything that needed to be said. Ava tilted her head, feeling the breeze play with her hair, and let herself fully relax against him. It feels peaceful, she murmured. In a way I didn't expect. Exciting, yes, but also safe. Comfortable. That's how it should feel, Liam replied, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple, a quiet declaration of affection and promise. Excitement and comfort, the perfect balance. They leaned slightly together, sharing a slow, tentative embrace, savoring the closeness without haste. The city stretched below them, vast and glowing, yet all that mattered was the tiny world they had created on this balcony, one built of trust, attraction, and a connection neither of them could deny. I'm glad we met, Ava whispered, her voice low, almost lost in the night air. I didn't know something like this was possible. Neither did I, Liam admitted, his hand lightly tracing circles on her back. But now that it is, I'm not letting it go. For the first time since their meeting, the tension that had both thrilled and restrained them dissolved completely, replaced by a calm, shared certainty. The night had brought them together, had tested the pull between desire and restraint, and now had gifted them something deeper, a bond forged in attraction, honesty, and mutual understanding. They lingered there for what felt like hours, talking softly, laughing gently, sharing glances that held the weight of promises and the lightness of joy. The city below continued to shimmer, but the balcony had become their own private world, a place of possibility, intimacy, and the beginning of a story that neither would ever forget. And as the first hints of dawn touched the horizon, Ava realized that the night had given her something extraordinary, not just desire, but connection, trust, and the thrilling certainty that this was only the beginning. Liam held her hand, their fingers intertwined, and she felt the truth in that simple gesture. Some moments, some people, change everything. The balcony was no longer just a perch above the city. It was the place where desire became something more, something enduring, something real, and something neither of them would ever let go of.